Awesome. Okay, so thank you again for serving as a Zoom host for the Alcalá Bazaar next week. We certainly appreciate it and want to take some time to make sure that you all understand your role and how the event is run so that you can support students during this opportunity. Just a quick overview of what we plan to go over today. We'll give you a snapshot of what the Bazaar looks like this semester. And what you will be doing fitting into the larger picture of the event, either as a host or a co-host for your individual breakout room. We'll talk about navigating Zoom, especially with the more updated versions and what that will mean for the event, both for you as a host, but also for the student participants. And then we'll certainly leave some time at the end for questions. If you want to put questions in the chat box throughout, we will start with those at the conclusion of the slides, but there will definitely be time to make sure you have your questions answered. So for this semester, we are continuing a similar format to the fall for the Alcalá Bazaar, splitting it up into 2 days so that people have the most opportunity to meet with student organizations and campus departments as possible. As of now, there are 183 groups who have registered. So really large event this semester, which we're excited for. We have the opportunity to have more groups with our virtual format, and they've taken us up on that. So excited. We have continued the 2-day format. So on the Tuesday, we have our groups broken out by type. And so our academic groups, athletics and recreation, and fraternity and sorority organizations. On Thursday, we'll have our changemaker groups, multicultural, special interest, and spiritual. And so you all as the Zoom host will be supporting a breakout group of organizations within one of these categories. In your actual room, you'll have a maximum of 20 organizations placed in the room. And so on the left, you can see there's a screenshot of the breakout from last year. And so you all will get an updated version of this later today following the training with your assigned co-host and the group of student organizations or campus departments that you'll be working with specifically. There will be 2 staff members in the room. You'll be serving kind of as co-hosts. We've delegated some responsibilities to each person. And so you all can figure out as a group which makes most sense for you to do. And then students can visit the organizations within the breakout room. So they'll enter the room and kind of either choose their own adventure of who they'd like to see, or they might ask you for some support in getting in touch with some of the student organizations. Earlier this week, we sent out the e-catalog, which has a lot of really good information about involvement opportunities at the university. And so we'll send that out as a resource for you all following this. But it is something that highlights a lot of involvement opportunities on campus. We have videos of our student organizations and our campus departments, and also kind of gives students an overview of what the Bazaar can look like. We're hoping that this gives them the opportunity to do some work beforehand to really make the most out of their Bazaar experience so that they're using their time wisely and making sure that they have the information they need to follow up with groups after the event as well. Shout out to Caitlin Hales, who put a lot of work into the e-catalog. Also want to just remind folks that there is a website specifically dedicated to the Alcalá Bazaar, which we will make available to you as well. But that will be kind of where we are housing the overall day of logistics for both days of the event. So that is where students can see which breakout rooms or which Zoom links are tied to specific organizations, as well as just an overall view of which organizations would be present on each day. So you will kind of work within the groups assigned to your breakout room. And if people want to visit other rooms, you can refer them back to this website, which is an additional resource to the emails that they've received about the event. So now we'll talk a little specifically about your responsibilities serving in this volunteer capacity. We have titled folks as host and co-host. specifically just to break up some of the responsibilities. And so when you get the document, it will say who is the host and who is the co-host. Going to be honest, pre-assigned through a list randomizer. And so if you and your partner want to talk about shifting some of those responsibilities, that is totally fine as long as you both know what's going on and how you'll be able to manage all of the responsibilities. So first thing for both folks who are volunteering is to just make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of Zoom, or at least version 5.3. A lot of the functions that we plan to use for the event are accessible to everyone once they have at least 5.3 or higher of a version of Zoom. And so kind of from now until either Tuesday or Thursday, if you can make sure that your Zoom account is up to date with that function, that would be great. The event will take place from 12:30 to 2. And so we're asking that your volunteer shift starts at 12 o'clock so that you are making sure that you've taken care of all the setup. So once the event starts, it can happen as smoothly as possible. So if you can arrive to your Zoom room by noon, that would be great. Everyone should have received an email from either Manda or Jeff with their Zoom room, so to serve as an alternate host. So if it's helpful, you can put that on your Google Calendar. That would be the individualized link that you would head to for your specific room on that day. Once your colleague gets there, you can assign them as a co-host or an alternate host if they are not already done so. And so that allows them to have the functions that they need for the room as well. The breakout rooms within your group should have all been pre-assigned, but one of the first things that you could do is to just confirm that breakout room 1 actually has the name of a student organization there. So making sure that you know that the somewhere between 5 to 20 groups that'll be in your room all have their each individual name, as that will make things a lot easier when the event starts, and should happen before we create any or open any of the breakout rooms. During the event, we want you to welcome students into the chat. That can be done informally or through the chat box. Want them to feel welcomed as they navigate the event, and then start a conversation as to what they might be looking for in terms of engagement with organizations or departments. You're going to encourage them to use the breakout room. So a lot of our students will be able to navigate through the event on their own with some guidance from you all. With the new Zoom update, people can go into their breakout rooms of choice on their own. And so want to make sure that they're able to do that. If they don't have the updated version, that is totally fine. You as the host or co-host would be able to move folks into breakout rooms. So you can just ask students where they would like to visit and place them into that breakout room. Also, another role is kind of just timekeeper of the event. So making sure that the event is going according to plan and that we are ending things on time, but really making sure that we're letting folks know kind of what they need to do to wrap up the event successfully before we just end the events at 2 o'clock. So if you could send a broadcast message out 10 minutes before the close of the event to notify students, and then for those who are tabling or hosting a breakout room, if they want to save the chat or do any last minute announcements before they depart, that would be helpful. For our co-host, so the other volunteer who will be with you, again, making sure that you are updating your Zoom account and arriving at that 12 p.m. deadline. Any tablers, so the people who are hosting a breakout room, will start to arrive at noon as well. And so welcoming them in, making sure that there's an understanding of which breakout room they need to be in for their organization. You will check in with them throughout the event to make sure that they have the information that they need. Just introduce yourself. We are using the ask for help function. So if at any point there is one of our groups who is tabling that needs a little assistance or has a question, they can use the ask for help feature, and that would signal to you as the co-host to jump in that room and see if you can help troubleshoot with that group. We are continuing to remind folks that it is recommended they have somewhere between 2 to 3 tablers in each room. So kind of hitting that sweet spot of a small group that can engage in conversation and welcome folks in, but not overwhelm people who are visiting the room. with if it is maybe a larger student organization or a team of folks in a campus department. But that is not something that we are enforcing. It is just a recommendation that would help the event go smoother. So just reminding them of that. And then we think it's helpful if those folks rename themselves to include their organization and or position. So knowing who is representing the organization and who is visiting the breakout room. And a way that they're able to do that is just going to their individual screen on Zoom, hovering over that top right corner, and where there's 3 dots, click into that and then choose the rename function. And that's how they'd be able to rename themselves. All of the rooms have been preset to allow everyone the ability to rename themselves. So it should be set up for you, but there is a way as a host to change some of the functions if need be. Well, we have done a lot of work to set up the event. Any contact information that the group is wanting to gather is on them to do so. And so if they want to save the chat, if they want to create a Google Sheet to track down names and email addresses, we are encouraging them to do that. You as the host are just reminding them of that. They have already gotten that information through the Alcalá Bazaar committee or SAI staff. So that should not be news to anyone, but just a reminder as they're getting ready to be prepared for the event. And then throughout the event, you're there to answer questions and engage with students in the main room who are there with the host, and then just dropping through the breakout rooms to make sure that folks have what they need or that you're able to answer any questions. One additional thing that might come up is there might be groups who have registered for the event, but are not there on time or are not there for the duration of the event, or maybe something came up and they're not able to table. What you will have in that breakout room document is a name and contact information for each of the organizations. So if someone's not there, maybe they've stepped away for a bit or no one showed up, that student is still interested in the organization. And so we want to make sure that we're getting them connected somehow. And so you'd be able to provide them with the name and contact information of the person who made the reservation in hopes that they're able to get in touch with them and get information for future meetings or events that they could take part in. We have an opportunity for you to get a little festive. And so just as we want the people tabling for the event to be able to be easily identifiable, we also want our host and co-host to be easily identifiable too. So at minimum, we would just ask that you rename yourself to indicate that you are overseeing the meeting and can provide some support. But if you are feeling festive and have the capability to do that, we are asking that you can use a virtual background if you'd like, and we have this one provided. Being festive is also encouraged. So I think Manda and Jeff are both modeling the environment and excitement we're hoping to create in the event. A couple of things of the how-to regarding Zoom, as much as it feels secondhand to some of us these days, keeps getting updated. And I think for this event, we want to make sure that you all have kind of a step-by-step process of how to support the event and the students navigating it. And so when you come into your event around that 12 o'clock time period, what you will do is make sure that the breakout rooms, again, have been named for all of the organizations who would be in there, and that you would assign folks manually. So at the bottom toolbar of your Zoom room, there should be those 4 squares with the breakout rooms listed under it. You would click that and switch the preference to manual so that people are able to choose their own group. Next, and this is new and a really important step, is that before you open any of the breakout rooms, you click the settings button on the bottom left corner. So you can kind of see that settings wheel at the bottom corner. There are a couple things that we need to set up before we open breakout room events to allow the event to go smoothly. Really want to reiterate that this has to happen before. If you open the breakout rooms and then want to change the settings, but the event's going and people are chatting, you actually need to close all of the breakout rooms and bring everyone back and then start it over again. And so want to make sure that this is a step that everyone is being mindful of. It will be shared out in the resources with a step-by-step guide. So it is easy to do. You are just going to click that button and then make sure the following things have been checked on. So first, that participants are able to choose their own room. That will allow our tablers and the students visiting the bazaar to navigate throughout different breakout rooms on their own. And then also want to allow them to return to the main session at any time. So they may have just come from a breakout room and have a question for the host, or they might want more information of what other Zoom rooms might be available. We want to make sure that they are able to fully navigate the experience. Again, you might have some students who don't have the update and would need some support getting into a breakout room. That is totally fine. You are able to do that as a host. And then the last is that there's a countdown to closing the breakout room. So again, you would send out the broadcast, but then we'd kind of give a 1-minute warning before the events are closing, just so if folks are engaged in conversation, they have that notification that it's time to wrap some things up. Then once you've done that, so you've moved into the settings, click that, everyone has their name, you would just click the Open All Rooms button on the breakout feature. And then from there, both our tablers can move into their respective breakout rooms to start setting up, and then students would be able to do that once the 12:30 event starts. The last thing for you all to note on the breakout rooms is broadcasting a message. And so what would happen there is once you've clicked the breakout room icon, all of the rooms would show up with their current attendance. On the bottom left-hand corner, there is a tab that you can click that says broadcast message to all breakout rooms. And so this is a great draft of what you would say, just reminding people the close of the event. And then for our tablers, if it is helpful to save chats, do some screenshots, or make sure that their attendance tracking is up to date before the event ends. For the students who are attending the bazaar, they've gotten this information, but this is kind of where the guiding would come into place to help them out. So as soon as a student enters your room, once you've welcomed them, maybe ask them about their day so far or what they're excited to learn more about, you can guide them to their own breakout rooms tab at the bottom of their Zoom screen. So the student would be able to choose their breakout rooms, and then what they would see is on this next screen. So they would see the list on the left-hand side of the different breakout rooms. So you can see the first tier would be risk management, and the second would be creative zone. What follows next are the current attendees in that space. So you can see the rooms that will have some people in there. You'll notice at the bottom, student activities and involvement currently has 0. That would be a case where maybe someone hasn't shown up or someone stepped away, and that's where we could provide some contact information for students following the event. But if they're interested in joining that first room, they would hover over where that number is, and what would change is it would move from 1 to join. And that's how the student would enter that breakout room. So once you hover over that number, it would change to join. You would click join and be sent into that breakout room. So similarly, for you helping students, you would hover over a breakout room if you need to, and then assign them into that breakout room once it's there. So let's say a student has just gone to their first breakout room, has engaged with an organization, and then is looking for more information or to looking forward to getting involved elsewhere. They would revert back to that first icon, so that breakout rooms, and then they would choose another one. So they could choose a different one within your room and just head right there. They don't need to come back to the main room. But if they do, you can just remind them that that is where they would access additional breakout rooms. And again, within that is that ask for help button. So if you are tabling support or tablers support, and they're looking for where that ask for help button is, it is also within the breakout rooms tab. There is some support to help you with all of this during the day. And so know that you all have what you need to be successful. You will be more than successful. But some specific folks within the student activities and involvement team are there to support. So Amanda and Jeff will be your primary points of contact. We will provide their contact information for you in case it is easier to email or text or call. Also can do G chats as well. Additionally, in case there are maybe some larger questions or some tech support that you might need, there will be a support room for the event where student activities and involvement, as well as the planning committee for the event, will be in there to help troubleshoot. And so in the document where all breakout rooms will be assigned with Zoom links and hosts, we will also make sure that there is information for the link for that support room should you need it. But you also might experience throughout the event that some of the people in that support room will float around to various rooms just to check in on folks and make sure that everything is going as it needs to be. And that's kind of what we've got. So we'll certainly follow up with these slides and then those additional documents afterwards. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just check in if there are any questions. And I'm happy to revert back to any slides if folks need.
I have a question. Did we already receive an email with if we're going to be host or co-host, or are we going to get that later?
Great question. You have not gotten that yet. So we are going to send that out this afternoon following the training. Just made a couple last minute edits this morning. And so want to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date version. So yeah, great question. It'll come out this afternoon.
I have another question. For the breakout rooms, as the host, do we create those breakout rooms and name them, or will those already kind of be created when we log on to the Zoom room?
Great question. Yeah, they should already be created. When we created the event, we created the names for the breakout rooms. And so what would help is if you just double check that all of that's been done. And so when you click the breakout rooms tab for the first time, it should all be listed there. And then you're just able to add those additional settings onto it and then open the rooms. Sounds good. Thanks for receiving all that information. Again, we'll be sending out some additional information afterwards. Please know that you are able to ask further questions. But what help us out is if once you receive kind of who your partner is for your volunteer shift, if you can just connect with them to either confirm like I feel good being the host or co-host, whichever I was assigned, or if anything needs to change. Also know this is a busy time of year for us, both as professionals and as humans in the world. And so if anything changes to your ability to volunteer, totally understandable. And we just ask that at your earliest convenience, if you can contact Manda with any changes to your volunteer shifts, that will allow us to flex some folks as we need to.